One of those options, as I just mentioned, potentially selling. So what does that look like if you are able to sell at an acceptable price? So we'll be in the domains of capital gains tax. And again, it's an area that's been targeted recently. So from April, the annual exemption has been reduced to £6,000. The capital gains tax rates which apply for residential property are 18% at basic rate. And for capital gains tax purposes, these rates carry on from where income tax takes you to. So in my previous scenario, in someone with a 40,000 salary would have about 10,000 allowance left. But if that poor particular person with that rental income, it's a high rate taxpayer, so their entire gain would be at 28% potentially. Tax rates for non-residential property is 10 or 20%. What some people might not be aware about, particularly if you've owned property for a long period of time, is that sadly there's no relief for inflation. There used to be. We used to have indexation. We used to have taper relief. But now if you've owned a property for 20 years, it's literally sale proceeds, less purchase price, costs associated with a transaction, any enhancement expenditure, and that's your gain. So we could end up seeing quite a lot of some quite large gains. It's going to cost people quite a lot of money to actually sell and move that money elsewhere in a lot of instances. The other thing I want to draw attention to is the requirement to do capital gains tax returns. So this has been in place for a few years now. We now have 60 days from the date of completion in which time to send a return of the detail of a gain to HMRC, even if you're doing a self-assessment tax return. So there's a double reporting element here. When this was brought in, the government was very keen that everyone did this electronically through the government gateway, which can become a bit of a faff setting up and getting registered. But thankfully now they have at least made a template available, so you can do a paper return if you want to. But a key take-home point from my point of view is there are some quite onerous penalties if you miss this, in particular after 6 months of the deadline for submitting a return and 12 months. So with a 60-day filing requirement, that works out at 8 months and 14 months. Because at that point in time, a penalty of 5% of the unpaid tax can be levied. So again, if we're talking about people having quite large gains, there can be quite large penalties as well. So just always remember this new capital gains tax return.